Welcome back. We are going to continue from where we left off. And now we will look at arrays, one-dimensional arrays squarely. And we look at some problems, very few problems. So here is a problem that you might have thought about solving in different ways. So this problem says, write a program that takes an integer between 1 and 7 and tells the user what day of the week it is. So if it's 1, it should say Sunday, and if it's 7, it should say Saturday. One way of solving this problem is to just use an if statement. All right, you can have like one if statement with a lot of else's, about 6 else's, to say if the integer is 1, then say Sunday. If it's 2, then say Monday. And you have a very lengthy program. You can also use switch. You can switch and check for cases. Also, you're going to result in a lengthy program. However, a quicker way to do it would be to just have all of these days of the week in an array and use the index of this array to access the day of the week. So something like this. You could do an array, give it whatever name you want, and then list these things, because you know for sure the first position in your array is position 0. And it continues, and if you have 7 items like days of the week, the last one is going to be position 6. That way I could just read only the integer from the user and subtract 1 from that integer to get the string that I want. So let's look at how we implement that in C#. So day of the week, I call it DOW, just a variable name. This is my data type again because it's an array, so I put a square bracket around it. And I list on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. In your case, please list all the 7 days of the week. Again, I just stopped here just because it's an example. And my user input, I call it user input, and it's an integer. Then I ask the user to enter the day of the week. Integer pass allows me to convert the string input into an integer. And then the moment I get it, I display the day of the week for them as an item in my array. So in the array, the name of the array is DOW, so I go DOW, square bracket, whatever integer value they entered, minus 1. The reason is that the day of the week starts with 1, so if they entered 1, they want to see Sunday. However, my array is 0 indexed, so I have to subtract 1 to give them position 0. So if we run this, see, okay, there's this code fragment I'm trying out here for the next video. All right, so it's asking for day of the week. If I put 2, I'm expecting Monday, and that is Monday, so it works perfectly well. That's it. We are going to progress, so you can complete that program and make sure the day of the week is up to 7. Here's another simple problem. Write a program that adds 2 vectors together using a one-dimensional array. The values in these vectors can be floating point values. So we've seen something like this in Python, where we use the lists to do it. Here we use an array to do it, but it's a one-dimensional array. So let's see how that works. I'm going to just comment out this part. And again, to make sure our videos are not so lengthy, I have typed this out here. I'm going to uncomment it. All right, so let's look at this code fragment. So since we want to add 2 vectors together, a vector, of course, is a one-dimensional array. It's a list of values, and it says they can be floating point numbers. So it's just safe for me to make them double. So first, I want to ask the person, to add 2 vectors together, you need the length of the vectors have to be the same. So I need to ask for the length of the vectors, which in this case is n. So enter the length of the vector, the person enters n. Then I have to declare my arrays to the dimension of that size. Again, this is the data type, and because it's an array, you can see that the square brackets are next to it. Data type is double because they can be floating point numbers. To declare a dimension for the array, you have to use the new command, new double. Then you specify the length of that array, which is n, entered by the user. I do that for a second vector, b. And for the vector that I'm going to store the result. So when I add A and B together, I want to be able to store it in another vector called C. So that's it. Now I want to progress and request for each item in those arrays and add them to the array, to the vector. So I would go from 1 to n. Don't forget our arrays are 0 indexed. So each time for the first vector, I'll ask the user to enter the data in the row 1. The user is going to see that it's row 1. However, when we are storing it, we have to store it in row 0. So we have to subtract 1 each time. So again, these are double values. So I pass whatever is entered by the user to using double.parse, and that goes inside array A. I do the same thing for vector B. Then here is the calculation of the sum of these two vectors. So vector C of I minus 1 should be equal to whatever is in vector A in that same position and vector B in that same position. And when this loop is done, we must have read all of the values, even if it's a vector of length 4, 5, 6, whatever the length is, read all of the A's and read all of the B's and added them together into a C. So the next thing to do is to display them. And again, I decided to use for each here so that we can just have a little bit of flair. I would have as well just used this simple looping structure that says I equals 0 to n minus 1, but I decided to use for each so that you can see how that works. So since I know C is a collection of double values, then I can iterate through it by saying double, use a variable called D in C. C is an array of doubles. So it's going to pick each of those items, and in the loop, I can then display them the way I want it. I want a vector to appear on the same line, value by value, so I'm not going to use right line, I'm going to say right. And I'm just going to use this formatting structure so that when the value appears, it puts some empty lines next to it, and then the value gets displayed. So we can execute this and see what happens. F5. So I'm going to have it here. The length, so that we don't spend a long time entering values, so I'm just going to put 2. And I'm going to put double values. So I'm just going to put random values. I can say this is 2.3 in vector 1, row 1. 5.9, vector 2, row 1. Vector 1, row 2, I can say that's 4.7. Vector 2, row 2, I can say that's 4.33. And as you can see, if you calculate that addition of that vector, that's what you're going to get. So this is my resulting vector here, 8.2 and 9.03. All right, so that is that simple example. The next thing for us to look at is how we can undo 2 by 2 arrays, a matrix, because a vector is a term used to refer to a single dimensional arrangement of values or parameters of variables. However, a matrix is used to refer to a rectangular arrangement of values. So if you have rows, number of rows, and you have number of columns, then we refer to that as a matrix. So in the next video, I'm going to explain to you how we are going to add 2 by 2 matrices together, and we're going to continue from this point. Boom.